Hey everybody, welcome back to the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. I'm your host, Gordo Gambles. Welcome back to the full card breakdown. This time for UFC Vegas 110. We have 13 fights, all headlined by Steve Garcia and David Onama. I do think it's a pretty fun, entertaining card. We're back at the Apex after a while off, but I do think this is one with, maybe not the best name value, but a lot of entertainment value and one I am looking forward to. As always, we're going to break it down from a DraftKings and a betting perspective. For more premium content, check out Established Run, check out CoolBet, all that fun stuff. Hit the like button down below, subscribe to the channel, show some love, and let's do this. We get the fight night started with the 15-3 Carnelossi versus the 6-1-1 Alencar. This is an interesting matchup, but purely because of the dynamic it brings. Carnelossi is someone who we know because she is just huge. She's jacked. She popped for PEDs. Her biceps are massive. Like, this is a scary girl to go out there and watch, but she is that one-dimensional, powerful girl, right? She's got good strength, which is going to come in handy here, but someone who historically has been the best optics winner on the feet, and, 14% takedown defense is something we do have to monitor here. To the Alencar, someone who will shoot takedowns. She averages 2.5 takedowns in 15 minutes. She is that pure grappler. On the feet, not much to offer, some solid volume, but someone who is really just trying to get you down to the mat, trying to utilize that ground game she does have. However, she's a small fighter at 5'1". She has struggled with physicality in the past in that Luciano fight, so it really comes down to, can Alencar get Carnelossi to the mat? That 14% takedown defense is kind of scary to do so, which is why I'm kind of leaning towards Alencar here. But there's a real world where Carnelossi is able to shuck off the takedowns due to her pure size and physicality and win the optics on the feet, being the better striker, right? Alencar's not much to offer up there. I think she doesn't get the fight to the ground. I do think she can, considering how poor Carnelossi has been there. So I'm going to slightly lean towards Alencar. When we look at the betting lines, when she's sitting at -230, -225, and all these kind of things, I'm not really feeling like laying that kind of chalk on someone who, needs the fight to the ground, facing someone who is as powerful as she is. So I'm taking Alencar, but there are definitely red flags with that there. On DraftKings, we do have to note the fact that, 9K, we understand, and I just outlined the fact that she can lose, but she is someone with a grappling path to victory, right? We see here she averages 12 takedown attempts. I mean, that is something to take into account here. And against someone with a 14% takedown defense, there is, in theory, a very good takedown path and ground domination path against someone like Carnelossi. So I'd be happy to sprinkle in Alencar in this top range because she does have a pretty high ceiling and a win. The issue is she's not always safe to win. And when Carnelossi does win, she could have solid output. She could have solid optics. She could even go out there and maybe hunt to finish. So I don't mind this fight from both sides. I think Alencar is a sneaky pivot play up top from the more popular Dulgarian, Johnsons, and other people around that area that we'll talk about later. But a fight that I do have some interest in, I'm picking Alencar due to that grappling upside, but someone that I'm not really running to the window to play or parlay here. And then we have the 11-5 Phil Rowe versus the 12-2 Sung-Yuk Ko. And this is an interesting one for me too, because, we have this big boy here in Phil Rowe who has a 9-inch reach advantage, a decent height advantage here as well, and someone who has shown to be pretty dangerous. He has finishes on the feet. He does have a decent submission arsenal there as well. And he is someone who is a pretty solid moment winner. The issue with him, though, is we have seen him struggle to win minutes, struggle to keep up a pace, struggle to put it all together and win optics. And facing someone like Sung-Yuk Ko, that's what Ko does best. Ko is a pretty fluid striker from the outside. He's able to land those counter shots, able to strike pretty well. And he can also mix in takedowns, land top control, pull off a big upset last time against Obot Elliott. And I do think he has the better minute-winning opportunities here. Averaging 4 takedowns for 15 minutes, pretty solid striking defense there as well, 59%. He is someone who is a minute-winning fighter. So it's moments versus minutes here in Sung-Yuk Ko. I do think there is a world where Rowe can utilize his length, can utilize his power to maybe hurt someone like Ko. Ko does, rush into flurries a couple times. Sometimes he is not as defensively sound as he should be. So I do think there's a world where Rowe could hurt him. But I do think Sung-Yuk Ko is the better minute winner. And for that reason, I'm going to pick him to slightly win a decision here, whether it be with the better optics on the feet or mixing in takedowns of his own right. I just do think he has a little bit more path to doing so. Give me Sung-Yuk Ko. From a betting perspective, some money's coming in on Phil Rowe here a little bit as well, but -180 around for Sung-Yuk Ko. He actually, I think, is favored to win by decision, which I would agree with. It is the fight's expected to go the distance. He's expected to win by decision. That's my pick as well. No hot take from me. But on DraftKings, because of that, I have my leniency towards it. Now, let's not forget Ko can land takedowns. So he averages 4.15 minutes. That does allow him to have a decent score. 101 against Obot Elliott last time, and I think he may be getting a lesser opponent here that could pay dividends here. But the issue I do have is he doesn't need takedowns. He can strike from the outside. And in a fight that is expected to go distance, I prefer people with maybe more finishing upside, maybe people with more consistent takedown upside, like an Alencar we just talked about. Ko kind of falls into a secondary option. I'm not the biggest fan of him there. Whereas Rowe, if he needs to win moments, if he needs to get a finish, he could be a viable punt play, 7.4K. Either way, an interesting fight. Not my favorite one on the card, but I do lean towards Sung-Yuk Ko. And then with the 10-7 Alice Ardelean versus the 10-4 Montserrat Ruiz. This is just an interesting one. You look at someone like Ruiz, she is someone who is known to be a smaller fighter. She's standing at 5 foot. You can see her smaller stature inside the octagon. that can definitely hold her back at times. And she has struggled to put things together because of that, not even averaging a strike per minute. She's kind of, looking for those scarf hold tosses and looking to hold people there, pull off a decent upset against Velismus or Cheyenne Bays there. And then instead has just kind of fallen victim to these bigger, more powerful fighters, right? She faced someone, Ardelean, who has also used her size to her advantage. We can make all the jokes you want about her being a TikTok star, shaking ass, whatever she wants to do over there. But she has utilized her physicality to pull off some decent upsets in her own right. She can go forward. She averages a lot more volume. And she kind of utilizes that brute force her size to keep herself upright and land more volume and win optics, right? She won a close one last time due to that. Only giving up one takedown to someone who I view as a better wrestler than Ruiz and Ryan Dos Santos there. So I think it's just a spot where, kind of like that first one, where the wrestler just may struggle to get her game going on the ground. The difference is, Carnelossi had a 40% takedown defense. Ardelean has an 87% takedown defense and just a little bit bigger. I just think the size is going to be too much for someone like Conejo here to get a fight to the mat, and just is going to be bullied and beaten on the feet. However, look at this. -3 or 400. -380, -400. Horrible price tags. Ardelean is someone who I still think is going to be fadeable in the future. I still think she struggles to put it all together, does run in there blindly. It's just, I think she has the physicality to win this fight, and I'm going to pick her to do so. On DraftKings, though, although she has volume and although she has pressure, and although she is someone who has put up 104 in her last win last time, she's still someone who does not have the best metrics. Is +210 to win inside the distance, is someone who I don't think she's going to go out there and shoot takedowns. Sure, she can go out there and maybe win a striking-based decision where she puts up 120 strikes and scores 90, 95 points. That could be okay, but, she doesn't have the same finish upset as Johnson, doesn't have the same wrestling upset as Dulgarian. She's just a secondary pivot play up top. I think I do like her more than Sung Ko because I do think she has a weaker opponent in front of her. But a fighter that I'm just going to mix in as a secondary option, not going to make it to my single entry lineups. It is more so going to be a pivot off the chalkier plays. Below them, I did pick her to win. And then we have the 12-2 Norma Dumont versus the 15-4 Ketlin Vieira. This is a higher level matchup, although we are sticking on that WMMA trend. But these are two fighters who have been at the top of the division for a while, or maybe higher level. And I do think it's an interesting matchup here. Ketlin Vieira has been more so of a defensive striker, 90% takedown defense, which keeps his fight upright. Can win at the clinch, can utilize more so that physicality to her advantage. And she faces someone Norma Dumont, who also has multiple paths to win. She can throw together a combination on the feet. She actually averages more strikes than Vieira, but she is someone who could also mix in the takedowns. 1.72 takedowns land per 15 minutes, can land on top position, can control there as well. And, is on a pretty good streak. Has won 8 of her last 9, including her last 5 in a row. I think this is interesting. Now, the issue I'm having with this one is, although I'm going to slightly lean towards Norma Dumont, and because I think she has more paths, whether it be landing on top control, winning minutes that way, or winning optics along the clinch, along defense, I do think there's a pretty clear path with Vieira. I think she's the better distance striker. I think she'll win optics from that range there as well. And I'm just not loving the idea of backing Norma Dumont at chalk here against someone who I do think has a path against her. But I am still going to pick her because I do think there are more ways for her to win. So I do think Vieira is live. I do think this line should be close as it is. We currently have ourselves -162, -152. We currently have ourselves a close line here, -163, -75. But if the line continues to climb, I do think Vieira has a solid path. I do think she has an ability to win optics from the outside. And if we're going to go ahead and give her a decent price, let alone a decision price here, I may have to sprinkle a little bit on that because I just don't think Dumont runs away with it. Vieira by decision +200. If that continues to climb, I don't mind a look like that because I do think the line is closer than it does entail. However, I am going to give Dumont the slight edge because she does probably have more paths to win this fight here, although it is pretty close. DraftKings-wise, Dumont hasn't been doing great. 94, 90, 90, 92, 74. So it's not a fight that I necessarily love. And even if you look at someone like Ketlin Vieira, she isn't giving up the most points. Even Kayla Harrison only gave up 85. Only gave up 69 to Raquel Pennington. 75 in a 5-rounder to Holly Holm. Well, it would have been 105. She's just not giving up points unless she's getting first-round knockout by Alvarez Aldana, which I would be shocked by. So although Dumont has done decently, I just don't really expect her to go out there and, score more than Kayla Harrison or score more than Rocky Pennington, who had more volume there too. So I'm going to kind of stay away from Norma Dumont. I prefer the people around her. We'll talk about, Radtke, Gorimbo, all these guys in a pretty solid range. Whereas Vieira, I don't mind. I think she can win. She's not the, sexiest option on DraftKings, 75 in a win, 80, 79. But I think she can win. And I do think that, an 80-point score at this price tag wouldn't be horrible. So I don't love it. I'm not running to play it. But I do think Vieira wins more than the line of tails. And for that reason, a solid play, I might mix in here a secondary option. Trust me, we'll get to some fights that I do like here. I promise. But this fight slightly lean towards Dumont, although I do think the line is wide. And then we got this one. The 6-0 Dante Johnson versus the 10-3 Cedrica Dumas. Dumas coming off being arrested for the 13th time, being kicked in the nuts so hard the fight was called a no contest. this guy's been a kind of a meme. And he faced a guy in here, Dante Johnson, who also was a meme for a little bit of a different reason, right? You look at someone like Dumas, not a very good guy, right? Being arrested, doing all these bad things. He doesn't really translate inside the cage that much there as well in terms of skill, but someone who I know I think has some decent, attributes inside the cage. I think he can strike from the outside. I think he has a solid guillotine. He just hasn't been able to put it all together. Dante Johnson, we have not seen much from. He is a round one knockout merchant. What's funny about that is he's 5'8". He was facing this 6'5" dude, this huge dude on Contender Series up at 205. Happy to see him down here at 185, maybe even 170 in the future. But someone who is of smaller stature, but hits hard. So it's a distance strike from the outside for Dumas, who's not a very good guy, versus a guy in Dante Johnson who, what do we know? He's got round one power. Sure, he can flurry and finish guys for sure. He can hit hard. How does he look in round two? Does he have minute winning equity? How does he look off his back? There are questions to be answered. However, I do think that Dumas is an interesting matchup for Dante because Dumas is there to be hit. He's been rocked and hurt before, and Dante Johnson, when he smells blood, can definitely get a finish here. So I'm going to lean towards Dante Johnson. I'm definitely not going to be parlaying him, but I do think the most likely outcome is he finds the chin and hurts him, considering how athletic he is at a small stature. Give me Dante Johnson. I don't know how much else I want to talk about this one. He's minus 350 right now on the betting line, I guess, but it's all built on round one equity, right? The longer this fight goes, the more it gets extended. Dumas could win a decision, right? I think he has more output there. So plus 1,000 Dumas decision would be kind of funny, but the truth is the most likely outcome is Johnson round one, which is favored, expected at this point in time, at minus 115. So it's not very pretty. I'm going to pick towards Dante Johnson, but because he has that round one finish upside at 9.2K, he becomes a pretty solid option. He has the best inside the distance line on the entire slate by a wide margin, the best round one odds by a wide margin. This dude is expected to win this fight and do so violently. So he is going to be a popular option up top, especially because he's expected to be a round one finish and someone you're going to look to target. I maybe prefer a Dulgarian straight up, but he is a boomer bust option. If he does not get that round one KO, he will not live up his upside. But I do think you have to acknowledge that, threat of the early finish and scoring well. So Dante Johnson is a phenomenal play on DraftKings. I think he does have that upside. I will not say he's a must play. We'll talk about guys I like better later. But someone whose metrics do look pretty good, I'm picking Dante Johnson. Dumas is kind of a wild card punt play, but I prefer punting with somebody else that we'll talk about later too. So maybe if you want, if you're max entering, but give me Dante Johnson. Hopefully he doesn't kick him in the balls too hard. And then we have the 9-3 Timmy Cuamba versus the 11-1 Chang Ho Lee. I do think it's a fun fight. High paced. I do think fights are going to bring different attributes. And you know me, I've loved Timmy Cuamba. I've been higher on him than I probably should have been in the past. And, I picked him over Oki, picked him over Almeida. I do think the guy's pretty good. I think he's pretty well-rounded. He can fight in all areas. I like the fact he'll be at 135 here. But he still is someone who I think has maybe struggled with pressure. Doesn't have the most fight finishing upside unless he's landing a flying knee. And someone who can just lose optics, cannot have the most physicality, and relies more so on his pace and pressure to break people. When that can't happen, he does struggle. I do think he can be taken down at some points, and I do think that's something we have to acknowledge in this matchup. He's facing someone like Chang Ho Lee. Chang Ho Lee averages 3.27 takedowns for 50 minutes. Has not lost so far in the UFC, has had that pretty good pace, but he has been pretty one-dimensional in that. He is going to look for takedowns, look to knock you out that way, can fight in the clinch, but doesn't have the most technique with it, right? He can take the back and he scramble, he can beat Cortes-Acosta to the position, but I still have yet to see him against someone who can really, really fight off those positions, right? How does Timmy Cuamba, his pace and ability to push forward, go against Chang Ho Lee's style? I have a lot of questions to be answered, and I do think it's a really fun matchup. I will say, Timmy Cuamba thrives on that pace and pressure, so if he survives the scrambles on the mat, if he's able to keep his fight in the feet, I think he'll win the optics. I think he's probably the much better striker to win that way too. But Chang Ho Lee's but Chang Ho Lee's erratic style, ability to push takedowns at a high clip, I think can cause problems here. And I do think he can win this fight utilizing the grappling. So I'm torn on this one. Again, a very closely lined fight. We have ourselves minus 110, minus 120 for Cuamba, slightly lean towards Cuamba. I'm going to slightly lean towards a dog here and Lee, utilizing that wrestling background. You know me, I love my takedown artists. But I do think it is a really close matchup. Give me Chang Ho Lee as a slight underdog to get takedowns and look to utilize that top control and implement damage. But I do definitely think there's a world where Cuamba is able to, get back up, utilize the damage on the feet, win optics in the striking, and win this fight here. However, I'm going to slightly lean with Chang Ho Lee. On DraftKings, though, I definitely prefer the Chang Ho Lee side. He is a bigger underdog in comparison to the money line at $7,700 here. And he has scored pretty well. 137, 95, 105, 120, right? And that's coming with takedowns, pressure, control time, right? Again, Cortes-Acosta and Timothy Cuamba are not the same fighter, so I don't expect him to get 137, but he's going to go out there and shoot takedowns. He averages 9.82 takedowns attempted, which is definitely something you love to see from a draft perspective. And I do think if he wins, it's going to be fought at a high pace with a lot of takedown upside and damage. He also looks to land a ton of shots from top position. I think it works out pretty good. So I'm going to pick Chang Ho Lee, and I definitely want to play him on DraftKings. He is $7,700. He fits to my builds pretty well, and I do think he can win this fight and put up a pretty good score in the same time. Cuamba is also someone you can look out. He scored 99 last time, but that did come with a knockout. He is more so like there's risk of him because he could be stuck on his back and lose minutes that way there as well. But I do think he can, win this fight. I think he could come with 100 strikes. I do think Chang Ho Lee is there to be hit. So this is a fight I do like to target. I'm picking the Chang Ho Lee side purely due to salary and also because his wrestling path to victory, and I much prefer him. But there's some viability both sides. Give me Chang Ho Lee in a close fight here. And then we have this one, 8-2, Billy Elekena, 9-2, Kevin Christian. I told myself that neither of these fighters probably deserve to be in the UFC long term, and putting them up against each other is kind of funny, right? Kevin Christian came in the Contender Series, fought Mazeo. I don't even know what you think about that. He looked pretty awful, but was able to get that win. His striking is just non-existing. Averages 0.75 strikes land per minute. He is horrible with it. Really bad optics. You could find a ton of guys regionally who can look better. But, he can throw up submissions and lock up a triangle. And, sure, he's got a decent submission game, but he can be controlled. He has horrible optics on the feet. The guy just does not look like a UFC fighter. Billy Elekena also has his issues. I mean, he was in that snooze fest last time against Aslan, but sure, he did what he had to do to win. He himself has better athletic attributes. He can land the big shots. He does have good striking on the feet. But we do have to worry about, he can be taken down. He can be hurt that way too. Although comparing Bogdan Guskov to Kevin Christian is just hilarious. So I do not think Billy Elekena is a fighter I want to back long term. I have problems with his process. I have problems with his ability to go out there and win minutes at a high clip. I also think he can be finished at some spots. But in this matchup here, he's going to have a night and day striking advantage on the feet. I think he has the physicality to keep this fight upright, and he's going to dictate where this fight takes place. I'm not a fan of Kevin Christian. I do think he definitely has issues. And if he throws up a triangle off his back, sure, so be it. But Elekena trains at a good enough camp and has good enough physicality to keep his fight upright, and I do think should win this fight at a pretty high clip. Give me Elekena. Odds reflect that. Money has steamed in. I think he opened up. Yeah, he's a minus 75 at one point. Now he's minus 250, minus 260, kind of settling in here. It's just an ugly fight. DraftKings-wise, though, I don't mind it. I don't think he's going to be as popular because of his pretty poor box scores. And, 44 on a win. That's pretty bad. But facing someone of Kevin Christian's caliber, you can hit him. You can land on him pretty well. And I do think there's a clear path for him, knocking him out early or winning a pretty solid finish win there, too. So I think he's a solid secondary play. I think I like him more than the Ardeleans and co we mentioned previously because I do think he can get a finish here. He is minus 120 to win this fight inside the distance, which is better than both those fighters by a pretty high clip. I think Kevin Christian is just pretty horrible. We'll get to really find out how horrible he is because of that. Flip side of things, Kevin Christian path to victory is throwing up a submission. If that's what he does, then he'll break the slate. Sure, that's fine. I just don't see it happening. I'd rather play a Chang Ho Lee that we talked about. I'd rather even take the shot on someone like a Carnelossi or a Phil Rowe, who definitely has more finish upside there too. Who's just a better fighter. So if Kevin Christian pulls off the meme, sure, that's fine. But Elekena should, win this fight and probably have his easiest fight inside the octagon. And then we have a short notice one, the 21-6 Nascimento versus the 17-8-1 Cody Durden. I like this fight. Cody Durden's always a guy who's stepping up there. I like the guy for that, but I do think this is an interesting matchup for him because these are two guys who probably want to compete in the mat. Nascimento is a phenomenal grappler, great back takes, great ability to throw up submissions off his back there as well. And I do think he is someone who is willing to play from his guard because he knows he can get sweep and he knows he can win fights that way there too. Cody Durden also is someone who wants to go out there and shoot takedowns. Averages 4.13 per 15 minutes. Is pretty aggressive with it that way there as well, and has won a lot of matches because of that. However, we have seen recently, especially in these short notices, he has slowed down. On the feet, he has been rocked. But although he is facing some really good level of competition, there's definitely been some issues in terms of, his striking optics on his feet, especially if he cannot get that wrestling going. Now, in this matchup here, because Nascimento is still willing to play off his back, 30% takedown defense, and Cody Durden's probably shoot takedowns, we have ourselves for some fun scrambles. I definitely think there's a path for Cody Durden to win this fight. I think he can win moments from top control. And I think on the feet, neither fighter really excels, especially defensively. So Cody Durden could win optics there on the feet there as well. The issue I do have here, although the path is there, if Cody Durden slows down, or if he's the one who's reversed and put on his back, Nascimento is the better grappler. He has more length to himself as well if he wants to win striking exchange on the feet there as well. And Cody Durden has, put himself in submissions before. Although he can fight out of them pretty well, I do think Nascimento probably has that X factor behind him. And for that reason, although Durden has his path to win, I'm going to have to slightly lean towards, Nascimento. No, gun to my head, that's who I would pick. But let's look at this line, right? Plus 220, right? I know it's on short notice, but plus 220. I just said it myself. Cody Durden's going to shoot takedowns. Nascimento's going to accept the bottom position. If Durden goes out there, shoots takedowns, and top control, he can bank rounds. He can also win exchange on the feet. I do not think that Nascimento locking up a sub or reversing position and dominating Durden on the mat is, going to happen at a minus 250 clip. So for that reason, Cody Durden's a very live underdog. Definitely at these price tags. Someone I do not mind backing. You get a full camp, maybe a bit different, but he's a dog, and you will go in there and fight for your money. For that reason, my punt play, someone I do like to play this week, is Cody Durden. $7,100. He averages 8.63 takedowns attempted per fight. And, in his wins, 85 against Snell, 84 against Hadley, 129 against Charles Johnson, which has aged phenomenally, right? When he is winning fights, he is bagging control time. 7:30, 9:33, 9:32, 12:32, right? And you look at something like Nascimento, when he is losing his fights, although one time he gave up 93 points in that loss there as well, gave up 69 to Rillian Paiva in that fight too. He can give up optics. So although I picked, Nascimento with a gun to my head because he could get those reversals right here, he get those reversals and win the optics there. He maybe get a submission, same way they did in Carlos Hernandez. Although he wins, I don't think it happens at the minus 50 price tag. I think more times than not, Durden can keep it close in the feet and can bank control time with the takedowns. And therefore, one of my favorite underdogs this week is Cody Durden at his price tag. Now, Nascimento gets that early sub. He can put up 107 again, but in a decision, I do not think has that viability to compete with the people in this range. So Stogger passed me on DraftKings. I did pick Nascimento gun to my head, but I'm close to switching that to Durden because of the way the line value is. Close fight, fun fight. Excited for it. Should be a good one. All right, on to the main card. We have the 10-5 Charles Radtke versus 9-3 Daniel Frunza. And, Charles Radtke has been good to me. I have picked, I think, all of his fights correctly. He went for me as a big dog against Urbina, which helped me take down that slate there. Blood Diamond was able to have success. And then he was able to lose to Mike Malott when he was booing Canada. Love that. But Charles Radtke is someone who I do think is a solid fighter. Chuck Buffalo, although he has questionable mic skills, does have a pretty well-rounded skill set, right? He can go out there and wrestle. I think on the regional scene, he was getting takedowns when using that submission game. That was his preferred path to victory. We have seen recently inside the UFC, he's a pretty good boxer as well. A ton of power in those hooks. Very good ability to make reads. He can be rocked and can be dropped, but someone who does have decent striking and decent power there as well. Daniel Frunza is kind of the opposite of Radtke. I made money on Frunza too, but it's more so fading his opponents. I cashed a nice plus 600 on the Contender Series, betting him to win by round 2. Frunza's a bit different than Radtke in terms of the fact that, I've also made money on him, but more so fading his opponents. I bet Frunza to win by knockout on the Contender Series, which cashed pretty big, but Frunza's not someone who goes out there and has that same skill as Radtke. He is a durable dude with solid cardio, and he can kind of build as the fight goes on. And he won his Contender Series fight, kind of like letting his opponent, punch himself out and then taking over, getting that knockout win. And shout out to him. But then we saw against Rhys McKee, he is super hittable. He was dropped like 4 times in the first round. He was beaten and battered early. And he's still someone who we also seen him taken down and struggled there before as well. So he has a ton of holes in his game. If you leave this guy standing in round 3, sure, he's got heart, he's got grit. He does have solid boxing, but he's just a slower striker. He's someone who can kind of rally, right? But when it comes to pure technique, especially in round 1, he is extremely hittable. He can be taken down, and he's someone who is slower in the optics. And I do think Charles Radtke is not only going to be the better technical striker on the feet, but also going to have a clear path to victory on the ground if he wants there as well. So I like Frunza. I've backed in the past, but I think this is Charles Radtke's fight to lose, whether it be with the technicality in the feet or whether it be with the grappling on the mat. I do think Radtke has more paths. Because of that, I think I'm going to bet Charles Radtke here. You maybe missed the line here. He was minus 55, minus 170 now. I think he has more paths to win. It's kind of his fight to lose. But more so on DraftKings, I do like it, right? He's sitting at 8.7K in between Coe and Dumont, who I said were fine secondary options, but he scored 123 in a first-round knockout, 118 in a first-round knockout. We know the knockout ability is there, and we just saw Frunza dropped a few times by Rhys McKee, but it's also that grappling, all right? He did not score this well in the Mike Mateta fight because he didn't really go for takedowns. He had 9 minutes of control, 1 takedown, and I do think that, you can take down Frunza easier than Mateta. So I think the grappling path to victory is there. I think he's a very good tournament option, and I think he works out really well in this mid-range when we're building lineups, which we will do at the end. So give me Charles Radtke. I don't think he's the best human being, and I'm happy he lost Mike Malott, but I think he has a big step down in competition here. I think he should win this fight more times than not. And although I kind of worry about him gassing out later, he should have all the technicality on the feet and on the mat early on to win this fight. Give me Charles Radtke. And then we have the 7-1 Isaac Dulgarian versus 9-0 Yadir Devel. And this is maybe other than the main event, my favorite fight in the card. I have a lot of questions to learn about Isaac Dulgarian because this guy looks good. Man, this guy looks good. He looks dangerous. He gets takedowns early, and he is just a beast on top position. He has a ton of ability to land finishes from top position. He is very dangerous with that. He kind of has that Khamzat Chimaev style to him where take down the first 5 seconds, passed him out, look to beat your head off, right? Oh, I could have said that better. But someone who is going to rain down blows from top position, can also hunt submissions there as well, and can definitely dispose of lower level competition. We did see when he fought the prospect killer in Rodriguez that, if people can scramble with him, he can tire out as the fight goes on because he is so explosive early. But he still showed good heart and grit, and all power to him for that. Valle is a undefeated prospect who has also looked really good in his own right. He averaged a ton of strikes, has been getting early finishes. We know he has a solid guillotine. We know he has a solid knees and ability to counter there as well. And he is someone we have seen go 15 minutes. I do think Valle is a solid test and a solid fighter for anybody to take on. But the difference is I think Valle kind of needs that range to operate. He needs to set his pace. And I do think he'll probably have more success as the fight goes on. He just has to survive the early flurry. And in doing so, I've seen Valle taken down. And Dulgarian is someone who has a wrestling background, is going to take you down and look to pass them out. So if Valle can scramble like C-Rod, or if he can survive the early positions, that's fine. I just do not think it happens at that high of a clip. And actually, in fact, I do think that Dulgarian is able to get the takedowns early and look to knock his head through the canvas. So give me Isaac Dulgarian to win. But I definitely don't want to underrate the skills of Valle, who is a pretty solid fighter and can definitely have some success if this fight gets extended. So very fun dynamic. I'm excited to see how Dulgarian does if he faces adversity, if he's able to still get takedowns later on. But I do think he has an early path to win. I'm surprised to see him that big of a favorite, minus 240 considering the path to victory. It's actually more so, would you not rather play the under in this spot here, under 2.5 at minus 145? That seems like more of his path. I'd kind of like that more. So maybe people are thinking he gets takedowns towards a decision. Also fine. I'd be more surprised by that. Instead, here we see, he's minus 110 to win in the distance, plus 275 to win by decision. I'd much rather play like the under 2.5 line at that price tag. It covers the guillotine from Valle, the knee of the middle. I like that line a lot better. DraftKings-wise, though, I think this is one of the most important ones on the slate. Isaac Dulgarian averages 104, and that includes a loss, right? 125, 122 in his 2 wins because he has takedowns early, because he looks to put people's head through the mat. Like, that is a really, really solid score to go out there and put up. So I think he's someone who kind of must have in a win because he's so aggressive early on, and he's going to break out as probably the most popular fighter up top, and probably my favorite fighter on the slate. Again, if the fight gets extended, if he loses, he is boom or bust for that reason. He needs to get that early finish. But the takedowns, the domination, and just the physicality from top position scores very, very well. And he's probably going to rate out as probably the best play on the slate. Now, there are direct pivots. You can go to Dante Johnson that we talked about the grappling upside for Alencar, Elekena facing a horrible opponent. But Isaac Dulgarian, from first look, is going to look like the best performer in a win due to box score, due to path to victory. Someone you do have to acknowledge for that reason there as well. Flip side, I think Valle could be a solid punt play himself. If he's able to survive later on. I just kind of prefer the Durdens that I mentioned, the Phil Rose, the Changolis. He's a punt play. I really do like Dulgarian, and I do think he wins this fight here. And then we have the 12-4-1 Jeremiah Wells versus the 14-5 Themba Gorimbo. An interesting one here. Both fighters who I do think, can be faded in the future, have definitely shown very good promise, but definitely have a lack of process towards their style. Jeremiah Wells, big muscle dude, a ton of power, can knock your lights out, can also scramble pretty well being from the camp he is, but someone who we have seen, make mistakes in spots before, be knocked out in his own right, lose optics. He's far from perfect, right? Themba Gorimbo was on this incredible streak. The Rock gave him a house. He had this great story, and he has been that pure grappling fighter. But he was submitted last time out. We have seen him face adversity there as well. And, Luke putting him to sleep definitely maybe affected that confidence there as well. And is he going to be able to go out there and spam takedowns against Jeremiah Wells the same way he was in the past? Maybe not, and that's more of the issue. So in this fight here, I do think you can make a case for both sides. Jeremiah Wells with the power, with the ability to lock up submissions, being the camp he is there as well. And just being that ball of physicality, can Themba Gorimbo take him down and dominate him? Right? Maybe you think no, and that's why you're picking Jeremiah Wells, but I did slightly lean toward Themba Gorimbo, and it's more so because of the determination. Right? Themba Gorimbo is going to push, and he's going to fight, and he's going to always do what it takes to get that spot. Jeremiah Wells, I've seen fight uncomfortably, not always fight the best of his abilities, not always give it his all and kind of give up inside there. I just think Gorimbo has more heart, and for that reason, I'm going to slightly lean towards him. It was a pretty close fight. Jeremiah Wells knocks his lights out, so be it. That's fine. I think it's definitely on the table. But I'm going to slightly lean towards Gorimbo due to heart and that grappling perseverance here. Because that on DraftKings, though, a very important fight, right? Gorimbo at $8,400 has scored pretty well. 123, 109, 130, 114, 7-5 takedowns. Like, those takedowns are definitely on the table. So Gorimbo is someone who's going to score very well in a win. And, although Wells has had knockouts before and has only given up, 50 and 50 in his losses, I do think if Gorimbo wins, it's going to be grappling based and could have some success there. Flip side of things, Jeremiah Wells, like I just pulled up here, it's 105, 103, 111, 96. Both the fighters have scored very, very well in their wins, and for that reason, this is a fight I do want to target. I slightly lean towards Gorimbo, but I'll definitely be sprinkling some well at 7.8K. My mid-range builds definitely like his finishing upside and his high scores in the past. So fun fight, slightly lean Gorimbo, but definitely a close one. And then we have the 14-2 Waldo Cortes-Acosta versus the 26-6 Ante Delija. This is another interesting one because Delija, we see that first time, came over from the PFL, looked pretty good, was finally a PFL tour type of guy who was able to get a win. And now he's getting a step up here in Waldo Cortes-Acosta, in my opinion, who has, been contending at the top. Cortes-Acosta is someone who is a very rangy striker, solid boxing, solid leg kicks. He can mix in takedowns against lesser opponents, but someone who wants to keep his fight upright and fight from range. Delija is the opposite. He wants to get in close, either knock your lights out or look to take you down. He's a really solid ground game for top positions, able to have success there as well, which makes it for a fun dynamic. Now, I really do like Delija. I do think he's someone who does have a well-rounded skill set and can have some success. I'm just struggling to pick him at a high confidence here. Actually, I think I'm going to pick the dog here in Waldo to be able to keep distance, utilize his physicality, just wins the object in the striking, keeping it from range. He's very light in his feet. He can strike from the outside. I think that although Delia's path to victory is pretty clear with the takedowns, I'm not convinced he gets, one per round and dominates, right? I think the most likely outcome is Waldo Cortes-Acosta either defends takedowns or just wins striking from range, wins optics with the boxing, is able to keep his distance. So when it comes to a pick, I'm going to slightly lean towards Waldo Cortes-Acosta. However, on DraftKings, it's probably Delija pass. Costa has not been the best scorer, especially from range. 74 against Spivak, that's a knockout, but that was wrestling. In his comparable fights, 90 against Sherman, 59 against Vandera, 74 against Spivak. I'd more so prefer Delija, whose path to victory is going to be knockout base, 106 against Tybura, or takedowns, laying the control time, or controlling someone like Waldo Cortes-Acosta. For me, it's dog or pass with Delija, although I did pick Cortes-Acosta to win. So, although I think Waldo Cortes-Acosta is able to keep the distance, and at times he's not, that'll allow for a pretty big score for Delija and someone who I want to mix in on DraftKings. And the main event, the 18-5 Steve Garcia versus the 14-2 David Onama, a pretty fun fight, one that just has violence written all over it. You look at someone like David Onama, he's been in absolute wars in the past. He has very good durability, very good heart, and is willing to throw down. That's what's really fun. Compare him to someone like Steve Garcia, who's on this huge knockout streak. He's got a ton of power in his hands, and he's putting everybody's lights out. Pretty big dudes for the division, and someone who I do think are going to go out there and want to swang and bang. All right, that's what makes this one fun. I think if you look at both fighters, though, I think they do have their flaws. Steve Garcia has, been so front-loaded. How does he do in extended affairs? How does he do, if there's grappling involved? We've also seen him dropped and knocked out before, so there's also that. But he is someone who has been on a very good run, who has been measured with his striking, and who has been hitting hard and looking to land those shots. David Onama, we have also seen, knocked down or tired out. Nate Landwehr performance comes to mind. He was being battered in other performances there as well. But he has shown that heart, shown that resiliency. And I do think he has, just as good ability to mix in takedowns in his own right. And he can compete with the volume on the feet. What I will say is I do think Steve Garcia hits harder. I think he's going to be the guy on the front foot. And although I think I maybe trust Onama's cardio more, that's what makes this one a close fight. I do think more times than not, Garcia hits harder, lands some more moment-winning shots, and maybe able to find a knockout there as well. But Onama is still someone you have to take into account his ability to persevere, mixing takedowns, makes this fight up. But I just think Garcia can be bigger, land more impactful shots, and win that fight for that reason. Closely lined fight for that reason. I did slightly lean towards the favorite here at minus 130, but I just think he has those moment-winning optics to win the fight here. And he's on a pretty good run, 6 fights in a row. I think it's a solid spot for him here. And although it should be an absolute war, I'm going to slightly lean towards Garcia. DraftKings, though, because this fight is, favored to end inside the distance, minus 700 actually, and also 5 rounds to work. It's a fight you want to have. 8.3 and 7.9, both of them fit in pretty well. Garcia has been a box score merchant with his knockdowns, right? Aside from his last one, 110, 108, 95, 133, 116, 122. Has scored very, very well, is very dangerous, and we have seen that when Onama has lost, although far and few between, 104 and 127. So those have been pretty solid there as well. So because of that, both guys look to score well. There are 5 rounds to work. I'm going to lean towards the Garcia side or the knockdown upside, but I will definitely have some Onama as well. Give me Garcia in a fun main event. However, that is going to do it for me here on the Plays and Fades YouTube channel. And quickly running through my quick picks. We're taking Steve Garcia, Waldo Cortes-Acosta, Themba Gorimbo, Isaac Dulgarian, Charles Radtke, Nascimento, but I'm close on the Cody Durden side. Billy Elekena, Chang Ho Lee, Dante Johnson. We'll go with Norma Dumont, Alice Ardelean, Sung Yuk Ko, and Talita Alencar. DraftKings wise, a lot of fun plays I like. So let's quickly go over to the solver here. Make sure you're checking out Establish the Run there as well. But because we don't have that many big expensive plays, especially because I don't even like Ardelean, you can play in this mid-range a lot. I said it myself, Isaac Dulgarian, if he wins, is probably going to rate out to be the best fighter. We want someone from that main event. I'll go with Steve Garcia. And I said, if I want to punt down low and underdog, if I want to get up to the big salaries, Cody Durden's a way to do that. So now I have 8.5K. We talked about, the Charles Radtkes of the world. We talked about the Delija side of things, the Chang Ho Lee as a dog. And I do think there are many ways for us to build and be pretty happy with these, lineups here, right? I'm okay with that. However, you can also keep it in the mid-range. You can pivot off of Dulgarian, go to Johnson, but keep Dulgarian in there. You don't even have to go down to Durden, but you can play, the Ketlin Vieiras, Chang Ho Lees, Demba Gorimbos that we talked about here as well. A lot of these builds rate out pretty well as well. So I'm kind of liking the mid-range side of things. I think it's either one guy up top. If you do want to go the two stud lineup, the stars and scrubs, then I do think you have to pay down for someone. I prefer a Durden, but you can still 8.2 available, play in that mid range. So a lot of fun spots. I'm liking these high upside options up top. If you want to pivot, Alencar I think is a solid option because not going to have that same value. Still going to have wrestling upside. So fun way to build. I'm looking forward to it. More premium stuff on Establish the Run. Betting wise, nothing locked up yet. That's typical for these videos. Check me on Twitter at GamblesGordo to see my full slate of bets, but I'll be betting some Charles Radtke. I'll probably be betting the under in the Dulgarian Delval fight. Some solid spots. I'm looking forward to watching. Check it out at GamblesGordo. But that's going to do it for me here. Make sure to like button down below. Subscribe to the channel. Show some love. I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I wish you all the best of luck in all your drafting and betting endeavors, guys. Let's make some money.